We cannot interpret that, but they can, and that's how they communicate, and that's how they will tell all the bees where that new location is, and they do it by the sun, and that's how they'll do it. Now, if you noticed, the bees have reaccumulated. I think we're only going to go for one more shot on this one because it's the first time was pretty effective. Now that we have this swarm boxed, we'll take it to the next location. This is the new hive that we're going to put that swarm in. And we'll start carrying all the gear over and getting ready to hive the swarm.
Yes, you can.
It's on the fence. It's been a warm day, first warm day we've had in a while, and that's why we developed a swarm out of one of the hives. They waited. They don't come out in bad weather, and they don't come out in the rain. They don't come out when it's cold. They're just like us. They like comfort. Okay, what we've got going here now, I'll show you what we're going to do with them and where we're going to put them. Of course, you know it's going to be in a hive, but I'll show you what a hive is made up of. One of the things we're going to give them, and you can see there's one bee already on it, they found it, and this is a pollen patty. In their normal routine, bees collect nectar and they collect pollen from flowers. The pollen is their protein, and the nectar they make honey from, and that's their carbohydrate. They also go get water. Got to keep a water source close by. They need the same things we need. Now, inside a hive are frames. There's 10 frames in a typical hive. This is called a frame with foundation. This is a man-made foundation. It gives the bees something to start with. It's a plastic coated with beeswax. which they're very familiar with. They have glands that make the wax. Now, what I also give them, which I've pulled from other hives, and this is what's called drawn comb. And that's wax that they built into their hexagon shapes on a foundation like this. This used to contain honey. I give them that so they don't have to make so much wax right away. They can get right down to business and the queen can start laying eggs because the wax is already there for them to start. They actually need 10 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. And in that swarm, before they left the other hive, they loaded themselves up with honey. Enough to start a new home. But you give them a head start, it's like giving your child seed money for school. You get an edge on it. What I also give them is a frame of honey. And this is an actual frame of honey that the bees have filled up in the comb, which was built on the foundation, and they capped it. Once the honey is ripened, which they do by fanning their wings, they cap it until they need it later down the line. We also use it later down the line. We rob from them. But we don't take it all. A good beekeeper will not take it all because they need it. If we took all the honey and fed them just supplements, it's like us going to the candy store instead of the vegetable aisle. So what I'll do right now is I will need to take out some frames to get a place to put the bees. Take out about half of the frames. And we're set to get into the vacuum box. Now I'll shake them off into that box. They're going to start flying around because their queen isn't here. Now, like I said before, it may be hard to see, but what I will do is I will pull, very delicately pull the bottom out. And then there's the swarm clustered in this vacuum screen box. Now to get them out, I will give a good firm shake and you'll see the bees start to fly around, but they will eventually all come back to home because that's where the queen is. They're filled up in the bottom of the box and they're already starting to crawl on the frames that are in there. I like to move this box away as quick as possible because it's got the scent of the queen and I don't want the bees going back to it. As you can see, we're already starting to fill up on the frames. Especially the honey. I will keep new foundation to the outside and I will put the honey and the drawn comb to the middle. That is where they normally start to build their nest, is in the middle. It will take them a few days to get settled in. then in a week or so I will check to see that the queen is there, see if I notice any eggs. Try not to hurt the bees. We need the bees. Without the bees, we'll never eat as good as we eat. They pollinate much of what we eat. This is just a spacer to put the pollen in so the lid seats down. So you start them out with some pollen, start them out with some honey, and they should be happy. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes they will leave this box as nice as it is. So, as a precautionary measure, what I've got is what's called a queen excluder. And it's basically a wire that the worker bees can get through, but the queen cannot. So if the queen wants to leave, she won't be able to. They'll hopefully start nesting. Couple of days I will take that off, so for ease of access. Make sure she's sealed shut. And there you have it. From swarm to hive. Honeybees. This way. And turn it around.
You're finding a bee swarm and finding a new home and honeycomb here. How did you get into this incredible profession? I've never met a beekeeper before.
Well, thanks for having me, George. I fell into it by accident. I was at home on the property and I stumbled across the nest. I had no idea what kind of bees they were, but they stung me up real bad. And so I called a pest control company as I was angered, and they told me they wanted X amount of dollars to eradicate the bees, which I didn't have X amount of dollars. So as I calmed down, I called the agriculture department. I knew there were good bees. I didn't know how to recognize them, but I figured they'd let me know. So I got a hold of the ag department. They gave me a list of beekeepers. I went down the list. I kept getting the phone machines. Finally somebody answered. He happened to live right up the street. He said I'd be right over. And he came over, identified the bees as yellow jackets. He said they're junk bees. They're no good for nothing. I said okay. And I said, do you have honey from the bees? He said yes. And so I said, if you ever need help, let me give you a hand. I'd like to learn about them. And that's about 10 years ago. And since then I've mentored with him. His name was Ham Boating. He had since passed. He was 90 years old. He's still tending his bees with a walker. So I figured there's hope for me. There was another gentleman called Bill Smith, and he was out of El Dorado. And I've learned that beekeeping is like building a house. There's as many different ways as there are beekeepers. So every person I've spoken with, I would learn a couple of different tricks, learned out of some books, and the biggest thing is hands-on. And I